Okay, all right, so there we go. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us today. Today we're going through modules 3 and 4. We're obviously fast tracking this for the experienced people in the industry. So thanks again for joining us. Again, if any questions at all, throw your hands up. I think everybody knows who I am, Paul Ratcliffe, the CEO of PRC Group Services. So if for any reason my voice doesn't travel, or just please tell me to speak up or do something different, and I'll do my best. So we're going to talk about pricing and margins today, and then we've got a couple of modules that we need to run through. So this one will be relatively straightforward because we're only talking about permanent staffing and the types of permanent staffing. If we get into a position where we're going to be talking about contract work, which we've already got work like that coming through, just please let us know as best you can ahead of time, because depending on location and specifics and insurances and things like that, then we have lots and we have hundreds of different templates that we need to use. So I want to narrow that down as quickly as we can. So I want to talk about the pricing, and then payment terms, and using this as your negotiation tactics, and then the other services that we offer. So when you go out to market, you can at least listen and see what your clients need. So talking about permanent staffing first, I've always worked on these 4 models. The goal is, obviously, we're going to be starting with number 1, unless you've got a very strong relationship with your clients. But ultimately, and depending on the level, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about here. We typically want to aim for number 3. Number 2 and 3 is best. And then for any senior or exec level, or very senior, or very hard to find or very difficult to fill roles, we'll potentially look at retained. So looking at contingent staffing first, typically we don't get a set percentage with that unless the client's using a lot of agencies and they've kind of got to an average in their mind. There's no guarantee that anything, and when I say guarantee, there's no guarantee for us for any money coming in, and usually the roles are open with other agencies. So when we start here always with clients, but I always ask myself, like, why are they offering me the opportunity? And the reason that I ask that of myself is if I can get to any reason at all, other than they just want to give me a shot and see how good I am, then there's typically a pain point that they're going through, and it's obviously for us to try and find that. So what are they struggling with? And then obviously I always ask, is there another agency involved? So whilst they say contingent, it typically means other agencies involved. Doesn't mean to say that there are any. So they can give you a role in their mind which would be exclusive, which is obviously we're going to talk about that in a second, but they want to keep it on contingent terms. So that's where we're all going to start. That's fine. It's perfectly normal, but we do want to aim for 2 and 3. Number 2 being exclusivity. Percentages can be negotiated. They normally want something lower. I don't think I've got any that's lower in my mind. Maybe 1 or 2 for volume, but the increase in guarantee slightly upticks because whilst there's no payment up front, we do have an exclusivity around that role. So the roles are only with PRC. So ask yourself again, whilst we really appreciate that, and we appreciate the commitment from the client and the transparency and all of that, I'd still ask yourself, why are they giving us that role on an exclusive basis? And do they perceive the exclusivity value to be very high, or at least higher than the contingent offering? And then obviously, is there a possibility to move up to engaged level? On number 3, on technical engaged, now we're talking about where percentages are normally negotiated, because that's where we're pretty much guaranteed the role is going to come in. So we'll get some kind of upfront payment, even if that's just $1,000. It's just an engaged offering for me is where we get some skin in the game from the client, and we say we are very, very confident we're gonna fill this, and the client is saying we're also very confident that we want the role filled. So on all of our engaged offerings, we've got an 80% plus chance of, and that's market standards. That's not PRC standards. I don't think, from my understanding, that we've ever had an engaged role that's fallen off. I have had it in my previous jobs and employment, but not with PRC. So we obviously get complete exclusivity. But what that also means is that anybody that approaches the client themselves for that particular role, we also get to screen them as well. So anything that's advertised out there, which we recommend they don't advertise, but we can't stop them. But again, engaged is great. I always look at it from lots of different ways. So, are they truly understanding the value that we're bringing? And what would be the outcome if we didn't deliver in their mind? What would also be the outcome if the role falls off in their mind? Because the upfront payment, typically in my world, and hopefully the same in yours, is non-negotiable, and it's non-returnable. So even if that's $1,000, then they're paying something up front, and then regardless of what happens to the role, then it doesn't go away. Moving on to the retained, that's when we get really into serious numbers, because that's typically for a much higher role, as we all know. So the percentages are usually higher, because the guaranteed fill rate is, whilst it's high, it's over 90% across the industry. It does take a lot longer to find these people. So, they're normally typical senior management, director level upwards. And, that's where we go in and completely take over the whole thing. And normally with retained, and I'm just saying this for people that have never done retained, it's normally split into 3 pieces. So my average fee in retained is 30%. So you'll get 10% up front to kick off the search. You'll get 10% in and around the interview stages when we've narrowed it down and we've got 3, maybe 5 people interviewing, and then 10% when the role is filled. So the challenges that clients have is if they haven't used it before, it can be quite daunting for them, but it's really no different than really engaged or exclusive. It's just that they're putting a bit more money up front. And we want to make sure that is crystal clear, because the non-refundable portions, number 1 and 2, they don't come back regardless of what happens. And I think that the last piece to say on there is what's on the bottom there is the timelines. Typically with clients, when they come with a perm role or any type of role, the hair's on fire. We've got to get this person in. They've only had so much notice, whether that's somebody resigning or a new role coming on board. Always amazes me that people are the last things that clients think about, but it's very true. So we just want to make sure that timeline is mapped out in their mind. Do you understand how long this is actually going to take? I've got a close industry colleague who is in trading and in recruitment of trading people. So trading gas traders and oil traders. And their notice periods on average are anywhere from 6 to 12 months. So when you map that out for a client, obviously the clients that are new to that want to hire people through an agency sometimes don't understand just how long this actually takes. So any questions on that from anybody on the 4 pieces before we move on?
No.
Is it all pretty clear? Yeah, I mean, I don't talk about percentages because it really is down to yourself to talk. I mean, obviously, happy to help. I'm happy to jump on calls. I'm happy to negotiate with you if you feel that you're not getting what you want. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. But that's the reason I don't go into percentages and I don't put numbers on there specifically, is I don't want to put numbers in your head, because there's always more and there's always less to be had. So just let me know if you've got any questions on that. On the other pieces, what I wanted to talk about is the HR consulting, market mapping, assessments and training. So we've got an arm of the business that does HR consulting. We've probably got 10, 12 consultants out right now. And it ranges anything from going in and putting employee handbooks together to a lot of the things that we get around compliance, or medical onboarding when they're renewing the contracts and they don't want to do it themselves, they want to outsource that. We've got lots of different projects underway. Typically what that looks like is you'll hear a pain point while they're talking to you, and I don't think there's anything that we can't cover within the consultants that we've got, but we also are constantly looking for new HR consultants. So if you do come across someone that is looking for work and does want to be a consultant, which obviously means there can be ups and downs in terms of employment, you know, we'd be happy to talk to them. So that's obviously if the client, you know, ever asks you from a HR standpoint, hey, do you guys ever do X? On the market mapping, I used to have quite a substantial share in one of the job boards. I can't say it out loud for confidentiality reasons, but I've still got ways and means of getting into those job boards. And what that gives me is ability to market map anywhere in the US, Canada. South America is a bit challenging, but the US and Canada in particular were very, very strong. And I can get anything from number of people against certain roles, number of roles being advertised, how often, how frequently they are. We can give maps and graphs in terms of what we think the trajectory looks like for the future. We can also do salary banding. We can do bonus banding. We can do medical packages. We can really map out anything that they want to know about, depending on what they want. It also depends on the timeline. But like a salary banding, we can turn that around in 2 to 3 days. They came and said, we're looking to bring on a project manager and it's in North Dakota, and I know that's a challenging market. Can you get me an average salary band across the board and what that package would look like and how many people on the market? You know, we could typically do that within a week or something like that. On the assessment side, we've got partnerships with DISC and Myers-Briggs, and then there's a couple of other individual small companies that do assessments as well. They typically use the same sort of information in the background. They just dress it up differently. But we can do behavioral testing, profile testing, but we can also do cultural testing as well, which is relatively new in the market. It's challenging because we need to understand what the client's culture is like typically, which a lot of the times we don't. So we can come in with we think this person will fit into this type of environment. When we do it in a reverse engineer like that, where we don't talk to the client about their culture, it tends to be very generic. So it's always best if we can get somebody to understand from a cultural perspective, like if it's fast paced, if it's, you know, how often they work in the office, how many meetings they have per day. We just get a general feel of what the culture is like. And then we've got a questionnaire that we put out, 50-60 questionnaire that we can push to people to get the cultural side to see if that's a fit as well. And then on the training side, myself and Robin have talked a lot about the sales training in particular. So we've got quite a few partnerships with sales training companies, and we've also got a partnership with a platform that we are potentially looking at purchasing or acquiring, and that's called Beyond the Edge. And that's anything from a very, very basic new to sales through into early sales management, and then all the way through to quite a senior standpoint from a sales management, sales director standpoint. So it teaches and trains people what to look for and how to sell, how to train selling, how to manage sales teams, how to put KPIs and KPAs in place and things like that. So there's that training aspect of it as well. So we've got a lot more services to offer than that I think than a typical agency, just because of our partnerships and relationships in the market. So if you need any information on any of that, or any of your clients come forward, then obviously please let us know, and we can certainly jump in. So any questions on the other services or anything on the pricing?
One question on that. Would we just introduce you to a relationship for you to do a quote, or do you have like an hourly fee that it starts at, or how do you price services out?
It really depends on what they're looking for, to be honest, Jennifer. Are you talking about on the HR consulting side?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we typically work on a HR consulting, that'd be an hourly fee. We do have clients that do half days and days, but I don't feel that that's fair a lot of the time to clients if they pay for a day and somebody doesn't work a day. So we're very, very stringent with the consultants as to how much time and effort they put into that.
Okay.
For the client's benefit. So we'll typically look at an hourly fee. There's no engagement fee. There's nothing hidden up front. There's a lot of these HR consulting firms will get you to the table and then say, oh, by the way, we've got an engagement fee of 7,500. That seems to be the new number that's out. We don't have any of that. What you see is what you get. The only challenge is when we have some kind of liability on the back end of it. That's where we find that challenging from an insurance. It depends on what they want us to do and why. But yeah, typically, in answer to your question, it's an hourly fee.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, anybody? All right, I will take that as a no. And I will go on to the next one. Yeah, okay. So I think I've said this a few times to people, but I'm trying not to teach you how to suck eggs, as we say in England, teaching you something you already know, but just for our records and hopefully you'll pick something up from it. We like to go through these slides with everybody. So when we're talking about negotiating, closing, you know, that's one part of the business, but the account management piece, I think, is often sometimes that people forget about that, and we'll talk about that. There's a role within your role that is sitting there, and if somebody doesn't bring it to the forefront, it can be easily missed, and that's where gaps appear. So this is what we'll cover today. I'm not going to read all through it, because I do want to fast track you through it, but hopefully at the end of it, you'll have either a great understanding or some great questions for me. So firstly, sales is not about selling. I've said this over and over and over again. When I train people on sales, I ask them to look, what's the problem that we're trying to solve for people? Nobody likes being told to. If you're getting them repeat, which we're all getting now, those repeat scam calls, and you've answered it by accident and put the phone down and they keep calling you. I mean, you're rolling your eyes the entire time. The clients are no different when they see our number pop up, if they perceive us to be a salesperson. So we want to make sure that we're coming across as we're here to help and we're here to solve problems. We're here to be a long-term strategic partner. We don't just want a quick win and we're gone. And most important is that we understand their business, so we can truly help them. Anybody that's done any selling or any sales training, which I've done quite an extensive number of them, I always find the closing for me feels very, very pressured. So you're talking, you get to that point where asking for the business, and then you've got to put the hammer down and say, okay, give me the business. And over the years, I've developed ways where I don't need to ask for the business anymore. I can talk people through it, and at the end, it's very, very natural for us to sign a contract, or to be introduced to the next person, or to walk away. And that's the best possible way that you can build your businesses, is by just being as natural as you. If you're a natural closer, then that's very different. I think for the most part, most of us are not. But clients, you know, this is about the client and not about us. And the last piece is success is a long-term goal, and it's not a quick win. Of course, we want money on the table as fast as possible, and there's a nice balance in there. But we want to turn our clients into repeat customers, because that's where the true money is, and we all know that. If we upset them on the first one because we push them too hard and they just say, okay, just give them a roll and then don't use them again, which I've heard clients say, then you're just constantly spinning your wheels trying to find new ones to replace them. So again, we want to sit in that consultative piece with them, and we want to guide instead of pushing. And then that usually, you know, that's when we get the information fed back to us, and we can really build a relationship out with them. So when we're negotiating in staffing, we want to understand three areas. We want to understand what is negotiable. So what is it that a client sees as negotiable, and look at it from their standpoint. Is it the payment terms? Is it the scope of work? Is it the guarantee period? Everything's negotiable in their world, but what is it really that's negotiable? And we have to listen deeply when they say that. Listen to the actual words that they're using. And of course, we want to add as much value as possible. So scenario here, which we come across quite often, is your fees are too high. So I'd love to hear what people's thoughts are on that, so it's not me talking the whole time. So has anybody had that where, sorry, your fees are just too high? How would you respond to that? Anybody?
I mean, I've gotten it once in the past, and then when I actually described the service and said, because the other company I worked with, we had a 60-day replacement that we put in there
Yeah,
and explained services and things like that. And I mean, they ended up using us and we didn't have to replace anyone. But
yeah,
also, the person who mentioned the fees being too high was not actually the one who signed the contract either.
right.
So,
Yeah,
but to get to that next person, we had to get through that person.
yeah, yeah,
So, but I mean, that was just a conversation on that. I've not actually had someone just say your fees are too high and just kind of like stopped there. I think it was just them trying not to say yes too quickly, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. So my counter to that, Jennifer, if someone's never said your fees are too high, then you're not charging enough. Possibly. So I get that on a fairly regular basis. Oh, your fees are they're pretty high, because I start high and want to come down. And what I try and use that as a digging in point is when you say too high, what do you mean by that? How much higher than and you're trying to get that percentage of what the next person down is. You come in at 30%, they say, well, we're paying ABC 25%. Great, 25% it is. You're still much higher than you're probably expecting. So I always kind of start my negotiations as high as without, obviously we don't want to rinse people. That's not what the idea is, but we want to get the reaction from them because we want them to see what the value add is as well as we're moving through that conversation. Oh, okay. So common objections that we come across, fees are too high. We already have an agency, that's usually a big one. When people say that to me, I always say, great. And as I said at the bottom there, that's one that I use I totally understand. Why would you not have agencies? But it costs you absolutely nothing to see what we can do because I'm not asking you for anything up front. I'm just asking for an opportunity. So would that cost you anything apart from looking at a resume and seeing if we're, at least competing with the next one? And when they're not, sometimes they say they're not hiring right now, and sometimes that can be true. Sometimes it cannot be true. You may have seen that they're advertised on a website somewhere, and that's why you've approached them. But just offer to stay in contact. There's a reason why they're pushing back, and I love sending industry information, examples, trends, anything like that. Anything that's one thing that I do is I put a lot of notifications on for my clients. So anything that's updated on LinkedIn, if they do a press release, I take that and go straight to them immediately and say, hey, congratulations on the whatever, on the win, on the project, on the hire or the promotion. And I use that to open that conversation up with them. So what objections have we come across in the past? I know, Jennifer, you just came up with someone with some, and thank you for that. But Brandon, Amber, Angela, what have you come across in the past? Who wants to go first?
I was gonna say I haven't been on like the negotiation side of things like that. More just like the type of business that's already set. So I haven't actually done any negotiating myself on pricing and all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you had any objections from the work that you have done? I'll just say it that way. What objections have you come across?
Well, just like anything from like retention, because these are, technical clients. And so I'd say just retaining, typically getting to a certain percentage. They typically come to us with, this is not good enough. And then we have to tell them what we're going to do in the future to make them happy, think outside the box and get those numbers filled, that type of thing. So typically with like the directors of retail operations and those type of people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've gotten oftentimes where people say, well, I just need to think about it. Give me X period of time, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is. And how I respond to that is, well, how long have you been having this problem, this issue, this whatever their pain point is? Let's say that they have been trying to fill this role for 6 months. Okay, well, you've been trying for 6 months. What are you going to do in the next 2 weeks that
Mhm.
is going to change that?
Yeah.
And let's think, if you were to bring us on, me on, whatever the situation, today, tomorrow, in the next week, I could have 3 solid candidates ready to go. And so you don't have to come back to me in 2 weeks, because isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome? You've been doing that for 6 months or whatever it is. So I've gotten that quite a bit. Do you get that very often or no?
I've had that a lot, actually. It's a really, really good example.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've had that many times. And I always ask myself afterwards is why? Why do they say that? And obviously they want to get rid of you. They want you to go away, but why do they want you to go away? And I've been on the client side as well, as I've said quite a few times, and I found that very interesting. Is you see clients that will say no for whatever reason, and they push you away, and most people will go away, and you think you've got the reasoning down, but sometimes the reason is they just don't want to look like idiots, and they're frozen in time. I've had HR people not say this outright, but basically in a very indirect say, if I fill these jobs too quickly, then I won't have a job here. You know, where they've actually slowed the hiring process down to make themselves look better. So I've had that. I've actually heard that internally with a client. So
can I ask a question?
It's just that it's diving in, but that's a great example. It really is really good example.
So I'm going to ask this question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Have you run across where people will say, let's say, I like what I'm hearing, I like what I'm seeing, whatever it might be, but I actually have a call at 2 p.m. with XYZ company, and I
Yeah.
want to weigh my options after that? I know how I've handled that, but I'm curious if you've run into that, how you've handled that.
I don't think of one, to be honest, Tristan. That's not what I've come across. Trying to think what I would say to that. I mean, I'd probably ask them in a very, very polite way. Then why are we on the call now? And then obviously, you'd want to set a call up immediately after 2 o'clock to find out what's going on there. So, we're trying to find the value add, right? I mean, what value are they bringing at 2 o'clock that I can't offer you right now?
Okay, that's how I've always handled it, as well as, what did you gain from our current conversation that you feel that either wasn't covered in our current conversation, or that you feel that the next company would cover better?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, of course, there are always, well, let's just turn it on ourselves, right? Think of the last person that tried to sell you something. I'm sure, has everybody got Best Buy? And I'm saying this because I just don't know, but we have Best Buy here in Houston. I think they're all over the US. And I've done sales training with Best Buy people in a very short period of time, but when their sales model is, you'll walk into the store and somebody will get right in front of you and they'll say, anything I can help you with today? And you'll say, no, thanks. I'll say, okay, and they'll just leave you to it, right? And every now and again, they'll come back and touch base. But if you say yes, if you were to say, I'm here to look at a fridge, right? They'll obviously take to that department, and then they'll hand you off to somebody, and then their goal is to take you through that cycle. But why do we say, and this is what they say in their training, if people are coming into Best Buy to look at something, but they don't need help, then why are they coming into Best Buy? And we all do it. We all walk into stores and we all say, I'm just looking, but you've got something in your mind you just don't want to be sold to, because you don't know if you want to buy it or not. And you know that if you get into that conversation with them, it could quite easily end up with you spending money that you're not sure about. And it's the same for the clients. You know, they just don't know what they don't know on the backside of it. And our job is to find out what that is. What are they frightened of, or frightened maybe, or what they challenged with? Is it because they don't know the fees? Is it because they don't know the terms? They don't know who we are. They don't know what we do. So that's where the value add starts coming in. And I like to ask a lot of questions around that. You know, especially if they've got another agency involved. Even if they say, look, I'm very happy with the other agency and I don't want to change. Fantastic. Can I ask you one question? What's the number one thing that they do for you that nobody else does? Because I'm trying to learn myself. And I'll say, well, their response time is X. Okay, great. You don't have to push anymore. You know that their response time then is the most important thing. So your conversation or communication with them moving forward has to have a theme of turnaround time in there, or improving the turnaround time, because eventually somebody somewhere will slip and give you that opportunity if you stay in touch with them. So it's just all about finding the pain point and finding that moment in time to add the value. So really, really good example. Amber, do you have anything on there?
But I was just gonna say they didn't know that they needed a solution, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, I've seen that in advertising so many times. They're like, well, I just did this, put out this ad for XYZ, and you know, I tell them, well, this is what we can offer.
Yeah.
You know, and keep coming back. And you look for like the long term. That's always what I have done in my line of work.
Yeah. Exactly. That it's the long term. It's most clients think, especially with, I think most of us will say that recruitment, the industry itself has got a pretty bad name. I've heard people call people like vultures, and they only care about the money and all of this sort of stuff. And again, that's why I really wanted to set PRC up with totally different, with these totally different values and approaches, because if we genuinely care about what's going on from the client and the candidate, then everything else will follow. The money will be there, you know. But if we focus on that, I've worked with recruiters. I went into one that was probably the worst experience of my life. I got asked to go. It was in Denver, and I went to. It was an Australian company, but they had a place in Denver. And I went in and said, okay, they were going on a meeting that day, and I said, okay, can I come with you? And she was giving me the lowdown of, this is what the client does. It's a construction client, and they're huge, and they've got all this stuff. Great, fantastic. There's 5 people in the room, and she walked in and sat down, and she said, my name is X, and do you have any jobs for me to work on? That's what her opening statement was, and I nearly died on the spot, you know, because people just don't, they just think in their mind, I've got, the pain point is hiring and the money's behind the hire, so I need to get there as fast as possible. And it's just so much the opposite. And I said to her on the outside, if somebody came up to you in a bar and said, do you want to get married? Instead of, would you like a drink? You're going to say no. And that's what you've just done. And it's just taking the time to understand where these clients are. I do so much research on the front end, like I was saying the other day about the prospecting and analyzing things. I do so much work on that front end. So by the time I get to them, sometimes I know more than they do, you know, but it shows them that I'm going out of my way and I really, really care about who I'm going to see. And I'm not just going there just to get the business. I'm going there to learn about them and understand their business so I can be a partner with them, you know, moving forward. So really good examples. I'm recording this this call, and I'm actually going to use this for the people that are new to the industry. So thank you for those examples. They're really good. Okay, where's mine? Okay, I put this in here. I do not like using closing techniques, as I've said, but as part of sales training, as we go through, and we've got quite an extensive sales training, if anybody's interested in doing that, there's probably 100 different closing techniques. But if I was to use any, these are probably the only ones that I would use. I think I've used an assumptive close, where we've had a very good conversation and I've said, I'm going to get the agreement over to you now. How fast do you think you can get that signed? That's something that I have used because it's very natural in the process, not because anything other than we've had a very, very good conversation leading up to that, and it naturally fits in. The urgency clause, I use it if it's true. If I do have a candidate and they genuinely are in high demand, I will tell the client that, but I would never use that in any other situation, but it gets used a lot. I've got 2 candidates, they're hot on the market, and if you don't take them now, then you're gonna miss out. Like, people know about that stuff nowadays, and they don't like being pushed into it. So again, if it's relevant and it's true, then we use it. But the one thing that I do use a lot is I like to say take success stories, because it's relevant. Certainly if it's relevant to the client, and I can help them, whatever their pain point. In this instance, it's reduce their time to hire. I always like taking success stories, so I've always got 3 or 4 of them in the back of my mind as I'm planning my approach out to a client. I always think, like, I wonder what they're struggling with. I wonder what their pain point is. Like, I'm very, very curious naturally. And these are the things that I like to take in there. So success stories are actually the ones that I do. I don't really see that as a closing technique. It is, but I don't see it as that. I see it as another way of helping them understand how I can help them, get through their pain points. So does anybody have any closing techniques that they've used, good or bad? Any instances?
For years, I've just been doing consultative sales and closing, so I really don't use like the heavy duty closing techniques.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do it the other way and it just didn't, it never set right and it never worked for me. So
No, it doesn't. You've got to be a very particular type of person. You've got to be, almost super aggressive, and it's almost the people that knock on your door in the middle of the day. They've got to close you in the first 7 seconds, type of thing.
yeah, the ones that put the foot in to stop your door from closing.
Yeah,
No,
exactly,
that's not me.
exactly,
So
exactly. Yeah, you've had that same guy as well, huh? Yeah,
I have, yes.
he gets everywhere. Yeah.
So
Anybody else?
Jennifer, can I ask you how you like to close then? I'm genuinely curious. And I say that because I want to learn how you like to do it. Oftentimes I'm very much the assumptive person but we've had such a good conversation leading into that it's like you said, it's just a very natural transition where I've tried to get to know them. Oftentimes these are people that we have some connection somehow, some way. So it feels very, very normal to do, but I'm genuinely curious how you do your closings.
Normally, which I've done in-person sales because I've done real estate for a long time, but I've also done recruiting sales for a long time. Normally, with over the phone, the conversation leads to them asking for next steps.
Oh, perfect.
I assume the sale, there's assumption techniques through there, of course, just in general conversation. But normally when the call's winding down, they're asking me next steps. Or, I mean, and normally, I've done 1-call closes. Lots of times I do a 2-call close because they weren't expecting your phone call that day also. So it's normally, what are the next steps? Send over information, and I always assume that they are going to sign the agreement. But I don't say, well, you've got to do it now or the price goes up by 50% tomorrow. Nothing like that. It's always,
Oh, sure. Nothing high pressure like that.
no,
Of course,
high pressure.
no.
Because especially with recruiting and things like that, kind of what has been said through the call, they've had the position posted normally 9 times out of 10 when we're calling them. If you have the relationship and they're reaching out to you saying, hey, we've just promoted someone and we're hiring, it's a different conversation versus, they've talked to 10 different recruiters. And if I'm the one that's sitting there just having a conversation with them versus saying, here's our fee and here's what we could do and here's our guarantee, it's a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I have lots of books, and I'm pretty sure Paul does too, that I've read and people that I watch that I can't do the, high ticket, like closing, like do it right now because like I can't even get the words out of my mouth to say it.
Yeah,
So-
no, you did. No, what you explained is very much kind of how I like to do it as well. But I always like to know how other people like to do it. So it's good to know. But you're right. Um, I've I've never been able to get the words out of my mouth like do it now because in 2 days the price doubles or whatever it is. Just that feels dirty, sleazy.
Yep.
If I don't like the feel of it, my client doesn't like the feel of it and they can sense that too. And so I've just never done that. I mean, I know people that do, and I will say that when we got quotes to have our house painted, that's one of the guys that gave us a quote was like, if you do it now, I'll knock 10% off or whatever it was. And I was like, you just sold me on not using you.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
it just didn't feel good. So anyway, thank you very much for that. I
I
appreciate
used
it.
to do automotive training and stuff, and I used to go into dealerships and I'd be like, we don't do the used car salesman sell here. And people would laugh at me. They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, listen to what you say. And like, I mean, I've just seen increases happen and stuff in dealerships that haven't had it. It's just, you have to meet your client where they're at. If you're talking, like I'm from the South, if you're talking to someone who's fast paced, you've got to meet them where they're at. If you're talking to someone who's a little bit slower draw and, wanted to get to know you, to do business with you, you have to meet them where they're at. But I think you always have to close with an intention of you're happy with how you're closing versus you're not going to be able to sleep at night the way that you said it to them.
No, agree very much.
I've always had a rule that I've worked with a long time is, and it works 99% of the time, is if you sell to your clients the way that you like to be sold to, it will work because it's very, very natural. But if you try to be something that you're not, or something that you don't like having done to you, like what you were just saying there, Kristen, it's going to be, and it's because it's a lie, like that guy taking the 10% off. Why didn't you take, I would have said to him, why don't you take 10% off the price in the first place? Why don't you give me your best price? Why are you doing that to me now? And I could probably get another 10, 20% off him if I do that, because I'm going to start pushing him on getting his price even lower. Because if he can take 10%, it can take 20%, I'm sure. So, I know exactly what you mean. So I've definitely used the assumptive, like I said, but it's been very, very natural. But the success stories are that I don't even see that as closing. I just see that as helping someone along and helping it. It's very relevant to, especially if they're going through something similar. Is I've done this for another client and this is what I can do for you. It just helps them along. So, yeah, great stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
So looking at the terms and agreements, we just before we kind of jump into this, and it's obviously very, very straightforward. We've got lots of templates on our side. I don't know about you guys and girls, but I found for permanent terms, they typically ask for hours. And for contract work, we typically end up getting a version of theirs just from the liability standpoint. But either way, when I look at terms and agreements, and we can review them for you if you don't want to waste time. We've got people that just, hey, I've just got this, take a look at it. I haven't even looked at it. Throw them at us. Again, that's what we're here for. We're here to make life as easy as possible for you guys. So this is what we're going to be looking at is are the fees crystal clear, and the potential clawback clauses, are we wherever possible. I don't like paying any money back because then we've got to back out everything from sales and recruitment. So we typically do the guarantee period, and then we'll, depending on the percentage going up and down, that's how we negotiate. If they want 20% instead of 25%, then the guarantee period needs to come down from maybe 90 days to 45 days or something like that. When is payment due? Are there any penalties? We don't have penalties as part of our terms and conditions, but we've got copy and paste clauses that we can put in there. So if you get someone that's got particularly bad payment history, or they start getting into a bad payment history and you want to stick with them, but you want to make sure that they pay, we can add penalties in there, typically anywhere from 1% to 5%, and we can add per day, per week, per month. It's whatever you're comfortable with. Remember, you're in the driving seat here. PRC are not going to go out and penalise your clients for not paying unless you tell us to do that, right? So again, it's just a very, very different relationship that we're talking about. Guarantee period, we talked about that. Typical guarantee periods in my world are 30 to 45 days. I've got very, very few clients now that are at 90 days. That's because I implicitly trust the recruiters that I work with on my roles. And, you know, we're very, very, well, I say very, we're quite niche down in sales and marketing, sales and manufacturing. So we're very confident that people will work out. We've got that cultural assessment and the profile assessments. Exclusivity is always something that we should be aiming for. Conversion is also something to be very wary of. Probably 10%, I would say, on average, is where somebody will switch from a temp employee into a permanent employee, but that is on the increase. So if you do get into that conversation, just understand what that looks like. It's always good to say that up front. And then the non-compete period, you know, we do need fishing pools where we can get our people from, and for the best intent and purposes, we're going to be fishing in a certain market or industry vertical. So we're going to be coming across those same people. So we all need to understand what that non-compete looks like. And it is more so than anything that we can abide by it and do the right thing. We're a very, very ethical company. It's not for any other reason other than that. That's the most important thing. If we sign to say we will not approach your people for 12 months, then we will not approach them for 12 months. But the difference here is that I've got to get that recruitment team understanding what that looks like, unless you're doing a 360 yourself. So we don't go into those. So we've got to constantly update our database as we bring clients on board as to who we can and cannot approach. Okay. Any questions on that? Anything that sticks out, or anything that you want to ask me, or anything that I've not covered on there? I'll give it a 10-second in case anyone has any thoughts, and then I'll keep moving. Okay, great. Okay, so managing client relationships. So this is where I wanted to really talk about while we're moving into the account management piece. And if you look at why clients leave, if we ever get into the situation where clients call or even worse, when they email and say we don't want to do business, you know, again, there's lots and lots of reasons to why that happens. But if you look at the top three, unfortunately, the number one culprit is that they don't hear from us. I just finished quite an extensive consulting gig, and they lost a major account. That account, I say fortunately or unfortunately for them, I've done business with myself. So I went and talked to them and said, why did you get let go of them? And they said they just didn't respond. This is a company that sends out 100 vacancies a week, something like that, for temp work, and they just didn't respond to them. So it happens a lot more than we realise. We can lose sight of certain clients. You know, we're obviously building our market up, but we can't ever forget where we started from. So if we intend not to do business with clients, all I ask is that if you don't want to do that, then just give them the notice period, and the same way that they would with us. Is just say, look, it's not for us anymore. We've moved on. We're a different company, whatever, you know. But leaving them hanging is probably the worst thing that we can do. Second one, they lose sight of the value that we're bringing to the table. So if we want to avoid that transactional relationship where we're just calling them when they need something. We want to be sending them stuff, information, keeping in contact, constantly touching base with them. And the third one, which I hear probably this more than anything, is that they don't feel prioritized. They obviously don't understand what's going on in our world. We don't understand how busy they are, and it's not their job to understand that. It's our job to explain that we are busy and that they are a priority and that we are working on it. So when it goes silent on them, we all know what that looks and feels like. So check in with them, even when they're not hiring, provide market insights. And if you do need that market information, if you say, you know, I'm going to attack the manufacturing industry, and I'd really like some key insights over the next 12 months that I can offer, and they're in this particular vertical within the manufacturing industry, or they specialize in X, let me and Robin know, and we'll dig that information out. With all the stuff that we've got swirling around, we've got tons of certainly access to information for you as well. And then just offer the workforce planning piece for me is something that was a game changer for me in my career. And what I mean by that is, of course, we have to be there when they're hiring, but say to clients that we can actually come in and talk to you and help you way before you're starting to hire, so we can start getting ahead of that. This is where a lot of agencies sit and just, wait for the phone to ring, or they just keep ringing somebody else. And our clients are in strategic workforce planning meetings the whole time. Every quarter they're running through, especially the sizable ones, and they're coming out with new hiring values and numbers. And this is where we're looking, or locations are coming up, or we've acquired someone, or we're letting people go, and we need to. There's lots and lots of things that we can talk to them about. So again, it's another touch point. We actually do that within the HR consulting piece as well. We do strategic workforce planning. So we have a couple of consultants that can do that. So if that's something that comes up where they want to look into the future, we can offer that as a solution. Any questions? Should have a okay. All right, cross-selling or upselling. So I should probably cover that up now because I've already given you the answer. But does anybody have any examples of either cross-selling or upselling that they've done successfully in their past? I'm going to cough while you're thinking. Sorry. Any examples? No examples of cross-selling or upselling. There's got to be one or two. Nothing at all. Okay. So when we want to cross-sell and upsell wherever possible, but we also again want to make it as natural as possible. I've worked for companies where they forced me to go and introduce the other services while you're there, and it can be very, very painful. So there's a key word that I'm using up here, I keep talking about, is listen. We don't have to go in there and say, we do this and we do this and we do this. We're listening for opportunities before we even start to cross or upsell. But cross-selling is basically offering a separate service. So we say HR consulting or training, and upselling is expanding on an existing or potential scope of work or service that we're offering. So typically we clients do have a lot more pain points than the one we're going into to talk to them about. But they always see us in a particular light. And this is something that I've seen on I worked for a company called Furcroft. I was an employee for 15 years. But when I came to the US, we opened I won a massive contract with Shell, a big oil and gas operator. If nobody knows who they are, you've probably seen the gas stations. And I had to open it through a back door, which is through the health and safety department. So I was just doing HSE people. And then as we started opening the contract up, I got into and they've got a cross-functional model, which means they'll have 10 projects, and then they'll have HSE, admin support, project services, engineering, blah, 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 financial, right? And then they put these dots where they need these people. So the cross-functional support of project services was what I went in to talk to them about. And we became known as the Project Services Group. So they forgot that we were actually even called Furcroft. They called us the Project Services Group. And we were not particularly good at project services. We were actually really good at engineering or recruitment of engineering personnel, but we got boxed in. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that when we're going to see a client, they will always have us in a very particular box in their mind, is that's what they do. So just listen for those points, and if it's natural and possible, is open up and say, hey, if you do ever have a need, then we actually do offer that service, and I can introduce you to another person within the company that can take the lead on that. All right, I won't go through the services again. So just kind of recap is negotiations about value. We want to close deals on solving problems and rather than focusing on dollars, and we want to build that strong relationship and build that respect for everybody. So that's what we want to become a respected and trusted business partner. All right. I think that's, okay, anything to close out on that? Any key takeaways, any points? Robin's just coming in there. Any key points or any takeaways from today, or any questions lingering from anybody?
I just wanted to say that it wasn't that long ago when I was working for the Kentucky News Group. I was just trying to sell an ad, and I sat there and I listened, and I realized that he had a need for something else, something much bigger than just an advertisement in the newspaper. And we were, a couple months later, we were bringing out a Franklin Salvesy special, and I mentioned it to him, and he was all over it. And that really made the company a lot more money at that time. So I get what you're saying about just listening.
Yeah, that's a really good example. What was it that you were that was that an upsell or was that a cross sell?
That would be a cross sell.
Okay.
We were working on that too, but it hasn't really came out yet, and we were just kind of in the works of it.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was a stable connection. We were gonna do it, so it was on the front page, so he got what he wanted.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good example. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really good. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Hey guys, it's Robin. Hey Paul, how you doing?
Hey, Robin.
I just jumped on. Looks like I've jumped on right at the perfect time. It looks like
Well, we've got another
coming to a
module to go
close.
through. Got
Okay,
another module to go through.
I
Yeah.
just thought I've caught up on a lot of things. I'll mute myself and shut up and just listen in.
All right. Anybody else? Any final thoughts before we move on? No? Okay. So again, not teaching you all to suck eggs here, but we'll run through everything that we have. So client retention strategies. So we just want to make sure that we're spending a lot of time on winning clients, but we want to make sure that we retain them and we build long-term. That repeat client business is what we're after. So we'll talk about why retention matters. First 90 days of relationship, I think, is absolute the key time. That's what sets the tone. Communication, proactive account management, the value add beyond hiring, and the power of personalization and handling difficult clients, difficult situations with clients. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So my phone's going crazy here. Okay, so why retention matters. So what does everybody think the 5X means? When I say 5X, what does that kind of jump out to everyone? 5 times what? Ideas?
Maybe you called him or you get in touch with them 5 times.
Good answer. But yeah, not the one I was looking for, but very good answer. Yeah. Anybody else? Very quiet group, Robin, today. We had a really good session earlier on some.
Have I scared everybody?
Yeah,
Should I
looks like
drop
you
off
scared
again?
everybody, Okay, so 5x is it's gonna and this is factual. It will cost you 5 times more in cost in dollar values to get a new client than it does to retain an existing one. And I put that out there because I don't think a lot of people realize that it's not really relative in terms of recent stuff. I've known that for a long while, but it's good to keep repeating it to myself and ourselves. It's going to cost you 5 times more time, 5 times more dollars, 5 times. It's across the board. It works out. It's at least 5 times. And to touch base on Amber's point there, does anybody know how many touch points it takes in this current day and age on average across all industries? But what's the average touch point?
7.
Anybody else? I'm going to start calling names out if because we need some interaction here from everybody.
7.
Anybody
14.
else? Take a wild guess. Kristen, what's your guess?
So it would make sense that it would be 1 to 2, but it's probably more than that.
Okay. Jennifer? What about Brandon? Angela, anybody? What's your guess? How many touch points does it get in this current day and age to get a client?
I was thinking 10.
So the average right now, believe it or not, is 12. 12 touch points. Pre-COVID, it was said that it was 7. So that was emails, phone calls, whatever that was. It was 7, it's gone to 12. What does that tell you? And again, that's across all industries. That's not just in staffing, it's across all industries. But what does that tell you? What does that say to everybody if we've gone from, if you want to get a client's attention and it takes you 12 touch points nowadays, 4 years later after COVID than it did 7 times pre-COVID. What information does that feed back to you?
But it's less about being face to face and more about phone calls, emails, texts, technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, anything where they would be, maybe.
Yeah.
People are more independent. They're more willing to do their own research, to do their own whatever it may be before they reach out to somebody else for assistance. And I don't want to say that they're less trusting, but because that information is so readily available, it's harder to have that personal connection.
Yeah. Yeah. What that tells me, and again, I was at that seminar in Canada recently. I was talking to somebody about this, and what that tells me is let's say I don't mean current group excluded, is we've become really bad at sales. If we've gone from 7 touch points to 12 touch points, people are hiding much more easier now, but we've also become really bad at sales and touch points. And I think that has increased because we're also probably spreading those touch points out a lot further. So whereas before you get 5 to 7 done in a matter of a month or two, hey, touching base, email, market insight, blah, 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 people are giving up and that's pushing that number out as well, which goes back to what I was saying. We've become really bad at sales and relationships. And I think it's really important to know that number and to track that number as well.
Hi, Paul. I was just
Yeah.
going to kind of jump in here for a second as well. I think there's another element to this as well, possibly. And guys, I haven't done this training, I've done this onboarding before, but I think post-COVID, a lot of companies have downsized their companies, and there's a lot of people who are doing more with less. So I think there's a lot of you know, the employees who are still in roles, they're very, very busy. And I think there's an element where you need to increase the number of touch points just to stay visible, because, you know, when, and I'm sure you've all experienced, I know I certainly have, and I know Paul certainly has as well too, when you get busy with something, you know, you're typically working with the hot potato. When you drop that hot potato, if you don't pick it up again quickly, you're onto something else. And I think that that's a contributing factor as well. And it's just reflective of the need to increase the touch points to get that client interaction.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah. So re-emphasizing 5 times more time and cost to get a new client than it is to get an existing. So once you work hard to get them on board, you want to keep them. Repeat client means repeat business, and happy clients become long-term strategic partners. And that's where we're ultimately aiming for. And I know a lot of this is repetitive for everybody, but it's really important for us to go through it, and we want to reiterate this on an ongoing basis. So first 90 days setting your tone, and all of this is rudimentary stuff, right? But people forget. They do. We get busy, we get sidetracked, we don't put things on the calendar. I've certainly been guilty of that. But your first 90 days is the most important time, because you're setting your time. It's crucial, absolutely crucial. And the first point that I think I see a lot of people miss is welcome your client, like welcome them to PRC Group Services. We are really, really happy to have you on board as a client, and we're going to look after you. And at that point is to say, what do you want to know about me, us, you know, the group, our recruiters, team, process, whatever. What does that look like? What do you need from us? And then even if they tell you, you know, okay, well, great, you know, we'll sign terms and conditions, give me a call in 2 weeks, because that's probably when the roles are going to start. Just check in without prompting. Just hey, I'm just seeing how things are ticking along. Don't wait for that moment in time that they've told you. And then also be proactive. You know, if they have said it's 2 weeks away, get ahead of it and ask them what can I do now? It doesn't necessarily have to cost money to be proactive and say, how can I help you now ahead of time? I talked about that workforce strategic planning piece. You know, we can have people doing that. We can do market mapping for them. We can whatever it takes, you know. So we want to really ask ourselves, are we really engaging our client? And again, reverse it on, if you were in a relationship, any type of relationship, business or personal, and you've just decided to engage with somebody, and then they suddenly go quiet on you, and it's a couple of weeks before they get back to you, you're going to start questioning it. So it's really, really important to set that tone in the first 90 days. Okay, communication is key. So be clear about everything that you do, but when are they going to hear from you? What updates are you going to be providing? So what are they going to be expecting? And again, is what else is needed? What else do you need from me? Be proactive. I keep repeating myself there. Clients should never, ever have to chase you for information. If they do, Robin just said it there, we use that term hot potato. It's probably something pretty urgent. But if you're on top of them and you're in front of them and you keep staying ahead of them, they shouldn't really have any need to chase you. And then what touch points are you going to use? So look at this, say multiplier efforts. Look at this carefully and say, what touch points are you going to use to stay in touch with your clients without overstepping the mark? You know, and that can be down to those industry triggers or events that we talk about, or congratulations on the announcement that you made, you know, things like that. It all starts adding up. It's all tiny, but it all adds up. And in the mind, it's like you're present, you're there, you're communicating, you're sharing information, you're not asking for anything, but you're there and you're there in front of them. So engage, ask, and listen. And talk about proactive account management, something that I mentioned earlier. I call it the role within somebody's role. It's really important when you're opening a client up to be in the mind of an account manager. And what does an account manager do is that's the person that you send in after the doors are open to start really progressing into the account. As salespeople, it's very easy for us to step back out and say, oh, it's the recruiter's problem now. But proactive account management, that is the key to making sure that everything comes together. So if you say to us, Paul, Robin, I've got 10 roles coming out of ABC Manufacturing, and I want you to handle it because I'm going to be on talking to the great. We'll handle that for you. But please don't forget your communication with the client because they are going to be wondering what's going on. So if there's expectations there or you've set expectations, we all need to make sure that we achieve it. So just make sure that we over communicate rather than under communicate. We want to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot and we're just adding tons and tons of value. So make sure you understand what your client needs and what their expectations are as well. Okay, power of personalization, something that I spend a lot of time on when I'm talking to especially groups of people. It's a really interesting group exercise. So when you're looking at personalization, what I start with is every single person is individual. We're all individuals and we all think and do things differently, but so have our clients. Okay, so think about the last thing that you bought from somebody, and I do need some feedback on this one, so I'm not rambling on the whole time. What was the last time you bought from somebody? What was it? And somebody that you're going to go back to and buy from them again, and ask yourself why. And ask yourself truly why are you going back? Not just because of the product, right? So if you got a face cream or a soap or something, you know. And in fact, I'm not going to say anymore. I was just about to say something else, but it might skew it. So what was the last time you bought from somebody that you know you're going to buy from again, and ask yourself why? So who wants to go first?
I'll take this one. Well, I mean, I know we all will take it, but
Thank you.
I did actually buy a face cream.
Yeah, I knew that. See?
Brilliant.
But I will say this much. I bought it from a lady. We have since become Instagram friends. I have met her in person twice since purchasing her product. However, the reason why I keep coming back to her, one, it works. It's amazing. It's a product that you could literally eat, so it's completely safe, and it works. However, the reason I keep coming back to her is that relationship that I have built with her.
Yeah.
Very similar backgrounds, similar situations. Obviously, she's a small creator trying to make it in the world, so that's obviously, you know, a big deal. But it's that personal relationship where I have reached out to her with a question, and within a matter of a few hours, she answers, and she now probably has hundreds of thousands of clients. And what would make her reach out to me, you know, is just, it's that personal touch that's there. And so that's why I keep going back to her. And because of that, I've recommended her and her products several times, which, I mean, if you want to research it, her company is called the Daily Essential Co. And her products are called Skin Bay. And I love them. So that's why.
Can I ask you a question, Kristen? Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic.
Of course.
And you don't need to tell me the actual, but is it more expensive than a regular face cream? Do you pay a bit more?
So that's a great question. So what I get from her is a cleanser, a serum, and then just a generalized type moisturizer.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's necessarily more expensive. I would say this much. Her product is so insanely clean, and she takes such attention to detail to make sure that what she puts in her products is so incredibly safe that honestly, I don't give a flying flip how much it is. I would buy it.
I think that's exactly the point that's exactly where you're heading, isn't it, Paul? And I think that's the key there, Kristen, is if your supplier, and she's great, it's great that you've got this fantastic relationship with her and you love the product. But if she lifted her pricing up 20%, you'd stick with her because you value her and you value the product so much.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's
so there's three things I always work with, and I learned this from a guy a long time ago. It was very natural. I don't think I could say it in the way that he said it, but he would walk into a client and say, There's three things I can offer you. It's quality, service, and price, and you can only choose two. Which ones are the most important? And in your situation there, Kristen, is quality and service, right? So you're willing to pay the price. You know, so the price, if you were price conscious, then you're going to go to something cheaper, which means the quality is probably going to drop, or she's not going to be there to answer your questions. But that quality and service is what you're paying for. So you're willing to pay that extra, and it always comes back to those three things. If you think about anything that you've bought that's worth anything, or something that you bought cheaply, and you see the quality or the service dip. So that's a really great example. Thanks for sharing. Who else wants to share something?
I'll share. I think it's similar to what Kristen said. Like, I go to the flea market on like Saturdays, or not the flea market, but the farmer's market.
Yeah.
You know, right down the street.
Yeah.
And we buy like our fish from like a local guy who catches it and sells it there every Saturday, kind of thing. So ever since we started going for over a year ago now, that's kind of the only place that we buy our fish from. And I found something similar where I don't even know honestly how much more it is or less it is than the regular market. It's just, you know exactly where it's coming from. You know, there's no color added. It's like you know what you're getting in that. And then it's on top of that, it's the relationship. You know, the first time I went, he like gave us a free, you know, slab of salmon just to like, you know, I want you guys to come back. So it's more important for me to just, you know, build this relationship than it is for me to lose, you know, $20 on this salmon, basically. So, so we find ourselves going back, you know, because of the people, you know, that small business, that more trust feel than you would just going to a Safeway or something like that. And it keeps us coming back. So a lot of similarities.
Quality and service again, because you said you don't know if it costs you any more because you haven't bothered to check, because those two things mean more to you than going out and checking. Is it worth saving $1 going somewhere else? Great example. Yeah. Robin, did you have one for us?
Yeah, I'll jump in just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And for me, I go back to people who I like and trust. You know, I'll pick something more expensive if I like the person that I'm working with, if I like the salespeople, and you know, we're dealing with salespeople all the time in every element of what you do, whether that's, you know, we go to, Paul and I go to the bank across the road, and every time we go to the bank, the guy in the bank, he knows us, he remembers our name, and it's like, hey Robin, hey Paul, how you guys doing? I don't remember his name, but I like him, and that's why I keep going back to that bank, just because he's great. And it's the same when I go into a bar. You know, if you find a friendly barman, and you'll probably notice that all of my examples come back to alcohol somehow. It's not intentional. You know, you find a barman who's friendly. It's that good service, and I always tip well for good service. You know, the tipping culture in the US, it's very foreign to British people. When I first came across here, just spinning off on another example here, I didn't understand just the automatic tipping culture, because in the UK you do not tip unless you get exceptional service. And nowadays I tip because it's almost mandatory. You just do. But if it's just standard passive service, I just tip the bare minimum, like the 15%. But if I get exceptional service, I will tip well for that, because I appreciate it and I value, and it's something that enhances my experience. And just one other thing, Paul, if I may, just talking on the 3 points that I've experienced that myself many times: quality, service, and price. And it's something that when I used to sell products, you know, this is slightly different because we're pushing people and personnel. But when I used to sell products, you could never ever compromise on quality, because that's the very essence of what you do. But I used to say, you know, when you talk about quality, service, and price, that if you want it fast, then it won't be cheap. But if you want it cheap, then it won't be fast. And so, you know, it's about prioritizing how people need you, us, we to respond to their needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. Great examples. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on, because I think we've make sure we get to the end and tap out. kind of, and I want to talk about the leads at the end, Robin, as well, just how we're going to kind of take it from here. So handling difficult client situations, again, I keep saying teaching everyone to suck eggs, but we're running through it. It's part of the account management structure, whether we like this or not, and it will happen. And it's not anything other than how we're going to handle the situations that arise. And I've always found, even though it's been absolutely painful, and again, it's some of the fundamental, the foundations of what we're building PRC on is honesty and transparency and that integrity piece that we talk about, and the trust and the respect. So if we've missed the deadline, just own it and acknowledge it. And I think even more important than that is get ahead of it. You know, reset them expectations and be clear about what you're going to do and why and when. Provide the solutions. You know, so come to the table. A lot of people go, oh, they hide and think, and hopefully it's just going to go away. It's not going to go away. And even if it does pass without comment or any feedback, that client has acknowledged, like, okay, that's strike number one, and you won't even know that. If the candidate doesn't work out, again, just own it. Let's just get ahead of it. Let's offer a replacement. Let's work swiftly. Let's communicate, over communicate throughout the process, and make sure that you know, we'll make sure that the recruitment team are doing the same. That we're coming together in the middle, and we're making sure that we're keeping the client completely up to date as to where we are. When I have a candidate, which is very, very rare, that and I'm trying to remember the last time something didn't work out. From a client starting, from a candidate starting. The only time it's ever kind of fallen by the wayside is usually when the client has stepped into the hiring process and taken something away from us. That's usually when things kind of go sideways. But even then, you know, communicate almost on a daily basis unless they tell us not to. And then sometimes they'll stop responding to you. So we just re-engage and just keep adding that value that value-driven content, whether you're sharing market strategy or announcement or congratulating them on something you saw. So just want to face those situations head on and just acknowledge that they exist and don't ignore them. And let's just keep providing solutions. And sorry, my phone's going mental right now. Keep providing solutions and keep coming to the table. And hopefully everyone will agree with this. It's if you keep going in there, the one thing they can never ever take away from you is that you've done your absolute best to keep this relationship or get it back on track. So again, has anybody handled any particularly difficult client situations that and you know, I'm more than happy to share one, but I always like to hear others. Anybody that wants to jump in here?
I had one, it was an aerospace client.
Right.
They kept changing the goalpost for what they wanted.
Mm,
And it
yes.
was, you know, sending candidates over that met, I mean, I hate to say one lined up 100% with exactly what they wanted, experience, who they worked for in the past, you know, who we were recruiting them out of, everything. And they're like, well, what about, can we find someone like this? And I'm like, so are we filling a different position at this point? Because, you know,
Yeah.
you're changing the job responsibilities at this point. And they're like, well, technically, we really don't want to pay what we agreed we would pay in the salary. And I'm like, so you want someone with lesser education and experience then? Oh, no, we want the same. And I'm like, so we're going to do a Zoom and we're going to draw out the wants and the must-haves of the client, of the person that you want. And they ended up hiring the person that I presented to them, but it literally took just really like explaining to them, like, this is what you want, what is the problem, kind of thing. Nicer way than that, of course.
Yeah.
But it was like they really seriously, like, they were like, well, and come to find out, the hiring manager for that role, he's like, well, if they found someone that quickly, why didn't our HR department find them? And we ended up I went to go visit with them because they're here local in Georgia, and had lunch with them and stuff and just talked to them. And I was like, your HR department's not picking up the phone and calling in the company and asking to speak to the person the way I did. And I was like, your HR person's not going to go and reach out to the people. They're going to wait for the resumes to come in.
Yeah.
And that's the services that you paid for.
Yeah.
And, it was good after that point, but yeah,
Yep.
it was just kind of like, let's move the goalpost on you. So,
Well, that's a great example and resetting those expectations, right? Just getting the client back on track and probably educating them a bit as well, Jennifer, from what I can hear. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Anybody else? Somebody who's definitely had a difficult client situation, for sure. Who have I not picked on for a while? Angela. Are you there, Angela? Okay. Okay, all right, let's move on. Just conscious of time for everybody. So how does everybody measure client satisfaction? I'm just going to leave that an open question. It's something it can be very, very challenging, but I'd love to hear people's initial answer on that. Whoops. How do we measure client satisfaction? So forget the second part of it. What measurements do we take to improve? But how do we initially measure client satisfaction? How do you know your clients are satisfied?
When they engage,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, like call back or engage in emails. That way I know that they're paying attention, which would to me would mean satisfied.
Okay.
I
So
used to do, sorry,
no, go ahead, Jennifer.
I
Sorry.
used to do a follow-up call, normally depending on the position, either 2 weeks or 30 days after, and I would just ask questions
Yeah.
and kind of thing. And then I would always ask something along the lines, depending on how communication was throughout the time, is, was it better to did you find the email communication better than the phone calls, or how can I work with you better in the future kind of question, depending on how the relationship went and stuff, because some people will call you, other people will answer an email kind of thing. But like, I asked them, what could I have done different, better, anything like that. And so only time I've gotten really negative feedback was only send me the person I wanted to hire. And I'm like, that's impossible to do. But because if I only send over one candidate, they think I wasn't doing my job. But, those kind of things. But I would love to know like what you guys do. I know a lot of companies have started doing like follow-up surveys, things like that, but like what that looks like.
Get to that in a second. Any other thoughts on that?
I'll jump in again. So I think you can generally tell the tone of the client from the language that they're using and the messages that they're sending. And what I've found my own experience is that typically an unhappy client will tell you very quickly. And certainly if they're wanting to continue the service with you, they will give you that opportunity to remedy their unhappiness. So I mean, because and it happens, right? Everybody. I'm sorry, I've got to switch my video off. It does happen that you will get some clients who are not happy sometimes. And as long as they afford you an opportunity to remedy that, then you can learn from it and you can improve that process. And how do you improve upon it? And that's, for me, it's always about listening to the client, understanding their needs, and then kind of taking the actions that they're asking, as long as it's within reason, because some things are unreasonable.
Yep, all good stuff. And none of this there's no wrong answers here. My answer is ask the client, how do I measure your satisfaction level? It's a great question to ask a client when you're in your early stages of your relationship and you're building that out, and say, what would that look like? Everybody's different. So how do I know from the outside that you're satisfied with my services? You know, and they're going to say things like, well, you know, I'm going to keep coming back. I'm going to, when I stop calling you, like, great, but I don't want to wait till that point if I've done something wrong. So, you know, if I need to measure that on a chart somewhere, or a bar chart, like, how would I go about that? It's a really interesting question, because it gets them thinking about how they're going to communicate to you back when there is a problem, but also when there isn't a problem and you're doing a great job. So when that chart is on the other side and you're doing a fantastic job and they love you to bits, you want to know that as well. It's very easy. We spend a lot of time. I think the world is typically a very negative place now. When you look at all the news channels and everything, there's nothing positive on the news, and it's natural human instinct is to look for the negative. It's our survival instinct. But we also need to know when we're doing a good job as well. I do. I love it when people come back and say, I really, really enjoyed what you did there, or you did a great job on that hire, or, you know, thank you for pushing us in that direction. So it's measuring both sides of it. It's not just the negative side of it. So my answer to that is ask. And also, how do you improve? Ask again. You know, when you get to the end of it and you're talking about something that went wrong or right, whichever, ask, how do we improve on that? What else can I do to make things better on our end? So again, it's just another client interaction. I always use client interactions wherever possible, because you're building that relationship out. Okay, so just to kind of recap, is we want to retain our clients. That's what we're, you know, remember the 5X, going to cost us 5 times more to get a new client. So when we work hard to get a client on, we want to retain them. So we need to do whatever's needed in there. We want to personalize it. So let's not treat them all the same. We want to resolve problems quickly, efficiently, but also with very, very strong key communication in the middle of it all. So any other key takeaways from today? And the question at the top, have you seen anything today that's going to change anything in your current approach? Or is it all kind of much of the same as to what you're doing and everybody's perfect?
I'm not gonna lie. I have written down all of this.
Oh, great. You can run the next one for us then.
All right. No, I don't think so.
Good. I'm glad it's sitting well with you there, Amber. That's good to hear. And we'll send you the recording of this as well. If you do want to go through it, and we use these recordings for other groups. So yeah.
I mean, and the one thing for me is I appreciate that the way that you guys are laying this out and the way that you're developing this. And it's truly, I say it every time that we have a meeting, you guys are very client focused and making sure that we're doing the right thing. And I think that shows a lot. And it also allows, I don't want to say the freedom, but allows us to really personalize it and make it where it works for us and we're serving the clients the best way that we can.
Great. Thank you for that, Jennifer. That means a lot. Thank you. Thank you for
I
sharing.
don't know that I could have said that any better, Jennifer. Thank you. That's exactly how I'm feeling.
Say it again, Kristen. No, that's great. Great feedback. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even if you take one thing away, that's what all this is about. But it also reminds me and Robin as well. I mean, we're not sitting here like absolute perfectionists getting it right every single time. It just we're all reminding ourselves that it's natural human instinct. We cut corners every now and again. We forget things. You know, we push things out. It's who we are as human beings. So it's just good to keep running through this and try and take something away and use it for sure. Anybody else? All right. Okay, well, I think we've got feedback on that, so I will end this. Stop sharing so you can see my Jonathan in the chat. Okay. All right. So we're obviously at the end. We've fast tracked these modules now. So what what we're kind of going to do from here is we're going to start going down to Robin will set up and he's just had to jump onto another call, I think is what he just said. We're going to kind of go down to more of an individual level now because we need to start feeding the leads out to you. We've just got so much coming in, it's just unbelievable. So we need to figure out what you really want to focus on. So the next session will be with Robin. I may join a couple of them, and I'm still here, by the way. I'm not going anywhere. But we really want to start working with you on, you know, your vertical or your niche or your industry, you know, whatever you want to call that. And obviously want to start building those leads out for you. We have lots of different types of leads coming in. We've just had this question from somebody else, and it was very relevant, and I want to make sure that it's clear. We do get clients that approach us. We've got incoming leads, but I think I said this the other day. Hopefully, I said it to everyone. I know I did on the new to the industry. We get a lot of dross as well. We get clients that call in that just, you know, and we've had. I'm pretty sure we've had agencies call us trying to find out information as to how we're doing things because our name is getting spread far and wide now. So we don't want to feed you with rubbish, you know. So we're trying to find the balance in between incoming and cold stuff, and we're trying to warm some of those leads up. We've got outreach software that's working in the background, where and it's coming from a PRC rather than it's not coming from Paul or Robin. That's one thing that we have to figure out. But it's warming clients up in certain industries and certain verticals. And as that starts progressing, we're going to start obviously feeding that out to you guys. So, so just have to bear with us in the initial stages as we start figuring out who you are. That means, you know, what vertical niche area, where your strong points. We also have to take into account the recruitment delivery function as well. I know some of you are going to do 360, but we need to understand where, because if you suddenly get 200 roles, or even 10 roles for that matter, and they're all different, you're going to need some help. So we want to make sure that we support you, that we don't let you down that way. And then also the volume, you know, some of you are working full-time, some of you are working part-time. So we want to understand that. So we're going to set up more of a one-to-one schedule up. Again, Robin will take the lead on that. I'll be in the background, but that should happen relatively quickly, like either, well, where are we now? Yeah, probably early next week now, given where we are. And then we can kind of take it from there. We've got daily meetings that are being set up, sales meetings for everybody that you can join if you want to. You don't have to. We're probably going to do 2 a day, and then we'll do more of a general weekly larger group, and then definitely a bigger monthly group. In between all of that, if you need anything at all, it does not matter how small it is, how big it is, just please come and talk to us. We are here for you. And as we said right at the very start, you're not working for us, you're working with us. So don't see me and Robin up here and everybody else, and that's not what this is about at all. We're all equally, we're all trying to build the same thing, you know, for the same reasons. So if you need anything at all, please reach out. I'm going to put my mobile or cell number in the chat. Get it back this time because I sent somebody else the wrong number. Everyone, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you need anything, please text me. I'm on text and WhatsApp are my 2 ones, but I've got Telegram, I've got all the others, but text and WhatsApp are my 2 primary ones that I use 24/7. I'm always working. I love working. I'm not a typical what I say workaholic. I love actually working. So if there's anything at all I can help with, any questions, please feel free to reach out. So any questions before we close today? Anything that's...
I have one question. I know that you had mentioned the leads that you have coming in right now. Is there any way that we can have a list of what industries those are to see how they compare to where we're wanting to go or what we've done in the past? Is there any kind of like overflow for that?
I'm laughing so hard, Jennifer, because I literally just sent like
yeah.
almost the exact same thing in a chat. I was like, of the leads you have, what is the industry area you're needing people with? That's funny.
So, and I'll tell you the reason why I'm hesitating is our biggest industry is our 2 is sales and manufacturing, right? sales being separate from manufacturing, but we also do manufacturing sales. But when you look at the sales piece, it goes across every single, we've got every industry you can think of. So that's our biggest one. But the other ones that are coming out, there's lots in manufacturing, there's lots in oil and gas, there's renewables, but that's starting to take a little dip right now, just what's going on, you know, in the environment and politically. And then we've got some pharmaceutical stuff going on, bits of retail, but those are the ones that kind of jump out right now.
Is pharmaceutical more like medical device sales, or is it more
Yeah,
on the
exactly,
other side?
exactly
Okay.
that. Yeah, medical device sales. The purple squirrels that nobody can find.
Yes.
Yeah,
This is true.
don't. I mean, if you've got a network of people and you want to recruit on it, but the recruiters are very frustrated because there's so much movement in that industry. It's just unbelievable. You know, people
Correct.
are sticking around like 18 months is the average now, and they're jumping, and they're getting substantial. I don't blame them. Substantial raises, but it's so incestuous that I mean, you probably know better than I do, Jennifer. It's crazy. But what I wanted to add on the back end of that is we want to get with you and understand what you think or what you want to focus on, because we can literally take any industry, any vertical, and we can start pulling leads from it. We've got agency leads, we've got cold leads that are going out and coming in that are from all over the place, but we've got some very, very targeted platforms that go out there, what they call scraping. I hate that word scraping because it sounds like you're scraping the barrel, and that's not the case at all. It's quality information that's coming in. So we've got lead finding software that we can go out and we can put it in to say, have they used an agency in the last 6 months? Do they have more than 10 roles going on? Are they in certain locations? Are they in certain verticals? Are they in a certain vertical within a vertical? You know, we can narrow it down and down and down. So we've got 10 or 11 platforms all talking to each other all at the same time. So if there is something you want to focus on in particular, then please let us know what that is during your conversations, and we'll happily start providing that stuff for you.
Okay.
So, does that all make sense?
That does, yes.
Yeah.
I like the sales vertical because I've done a lot in sales, but across kind of the board, it was never like, there were certain industries that were specific, but it was sales roles all the way from the low one up to the high one.
Yeah.
Sales managers, sales directors, things like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll work on a list and everything. And when we meet, I'll have everything. So.
Okay. Yeah, we've just got one of the guys that John just prior to this group. He's only been, I think it's his first full week. He took a week off, and it's his first full week, and he hit 200 roles with one company straight off the bat, and it's like 70 sales reps and 15 sales managers and 5 regional managers, and you know, so yeah, that's and that's what we're just getting better and better because we've got that sales training piece, Jennifer, as well, and we've got the cultural and the assessment piece. I don't think there's anything else that fits more better than the sales industry, but
Right, yes.
it can absolutely be used for other things, but it's working really, really well with that. So if that's where you want to stick, then yeah, we've got more than we can handle.
Okay, perfect.
Kristen, I know you said this briefly, but I don't want to say that. Were we supposed to send over information on where we send our commissions to? I don't remember getting anything. Yeah, so we've got direct deposit forms. We'll get those out to you next week. We don't like taking people's banking information until we know that's going to happen for obvious reasons. Again, it's the ethical side of the business. So we want to get through all the onboarding and make sure everyone's comfortable, and yes, thumbs up, we want to go, and then we'll get that information from you. So we don't like holding on to information unless we absolutely need to. You don't just want to take all my zillions from my accounts. No, we do not. No, not at all. No, that's not how we make money. That's too funny. Yeah. So any other questions, anybody? Nothing at all? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been great. And again, I just want to say thank you for last week for your patience. We had that bloody power cut, and then yeah, like I said, I went down as well. So I really appreciate all of the patience and all of this. We're really looking forward. We're just really excited about all of this, and we're all gonna do very, very well out of this. Not just monetary wise, but I think career wise, and it's all gonna take off. So we're super excited to have everybody on board. So look forward to talking to you early next week. We'll be in touch, either myself, probably Robin. One of us will be in touch about scheduling that next call. And you've got my cell phone. Please don't be a stranger. If you have any questions at all, something pops up tonight, just send me a text message. More than happy to text you back or jump on a call. All right, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
Bye,
you.
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.